Hey guys, welcome back into Legacy. So I just want to do a fairly quick, hopefully not too long video on something that has been bothering me for a couple of years now, about a year and a half, 2 years now. And I want to discuss a trend I'm seeing, and it's not really drama related because it's not necessarily a good or bad thing. It's just something I've caught wind of in the communities I'm associated with. Um, and I'd love to hear the opinions of other people, either it's just a reaction video or whatever, because I do want to hear how people feel about this issue as I go through it and how they feel about it, how they've seen it interact, and all that kind of stuff. And that's the idea that I think there's a lot of people in the RPG hobby who claim to want to play the games, but when offered the chance to join in to the hobby, they don't. And that's a big problem in that it creates a lot of undue burden on groups, especially groups that are trying to form around games that may not have a built-in interest anyways, or because they're niche, or because they're small companies, or whatever. Those games are already hard enough to recruit for, and it gets even harder when the reality is that a lot of people around the hobby would rather theorize and discuss it on YouTube and whatever. And yes, I know the irony of saying it, but discuss it on YouTube and everything else rather than actually play the game. And just so you know, the reason I don't fall into that camp when I talk about talking on YouTube and all that other stuff is, guys, I do play, I do run games, I do, regularly engage in the hobby. I don't just sit here on YouTube and theorize with you guys. I actually am an active participant in the hobby whenever I practically can. Even though I have been taking a little bit of a hiatus lately because I've just been under a ton of stress, a bunch of stuff going on personally. So I've been taking a little bit of hiatus, but I am getting ready to jump back into running here shortly. But all that being said, guys, the issue that I see comes from the fact that I think there are three types of gamers in the hobby, and I think that you fall into one of these three camps. And only the third camp is the only group that I think authentically, routinely means it when they say they're looking for games. Um, One group you'll see why I believe this. They are looking for something very specific, whereas the first group, they're not necessarily looking. They like the concept or whatever, and all of the parts of RPing, but it's very much specific to them, how they enjoy it. And let me get into what I'm talking about real fast, guys, so you understand. So the first group is going to be what I call the casual or the tourist player. The casual player, the tourist player, he is a guy that probably got into D&D either through like a group of college friends or maybe some coworkers, or he even got into it during, say, COVID. And he enjoyed it. He enjoyed being with his friends. He enjoyed playing D&D with his friends or whatever they were playing. We're just going to use D&D as a shorthand here. He enjoyed playing D&D with his friends. He enjoyed the hobby. He enjoyed the camaraderie or in the friendship around the table. Um, and then as maybe he got older, got more into a career, left college, whatever, he fell away. He still stays on the periphery. He or she stays on the periphery of the hobby. They continue to enjoy the hobby. They enjoy when they sit down and play with their friends, but they're not actually looking for a game, even though they may go onto forums and stuff saying looking for games. They're not actually really looking. They may be trying to capture the fill from another group or whatever because their group may not be able to meet or whatever, but they're not actively really looking for games because they're not playing D&D as a hobbyist. They're doing it because they enjoy the table itself. They enjoy the people they play with. They don't necessarily enjoy the rule set. They don't necessarily enjoy, debating lore. That's not why they're at a game table. They're not playing D&D to capture that skill. That a serious hobbyist may be looking for, a very serious hobbyist may be looking for. They are doing it because they are, lack of better terms, they are tourists to the hobby. They come and go. They don't really stay around. They may float around the periphery, but they don't keep their ear to the ground about games. They don't like if a game exists and the only game this group says ever played is Pathfinder, they may not even know other fantasy RPGs exist because the only game they're even familiar with is Pathfinder, and probably D&D to some extent, but because D&D is one of the ubiquitous things that I'm talking about. Like from a pure standpoint, you couldn't mention a more obscure fantasy game to somebody who only plays Pathfinder, who does it as a tourist or casual type player, and expect them to really know anything about a more casual, lower print, small company game like, say, Dragonbane or Forbidden Lands, or even something like Fantasy GURPS or fantasy hero. Those are very obscure. This gets into the very obscure, but so that's the first group. Those people are not looking for games. They are looking to capture the feel of the hobby that they got the first time they ever sat around with friends and played, and realized that it was an enjoyable social environment. They love it, but they will come out of the woodwork occasionally like, well, I really want to play something, but they really don't, because what they're really looking for is to scratch the itch that they get with their friends. And like I said, it could be that they state that they're looking for games because they are trying to find maybe a different group of people they can play with because their original group just doesn't exist anymore. But they're not really looking. They're kind of just there. They're not harmful necessarily. I mean, there's whole videos that people talk about how casual players can be harmful. Most of them are harmless people. I'm not going to get into the drama around the idea of casual players or the tourist player because there's a lot of drama that people try to drum up around. They're mostly harmless people who, like I said, most of them just enjoy. They don't enjoy D&D. They enjoy the table. They enjoy the friendship. They enjoy the eating chips and rolling dice, and that's what D&D is to them. And so when they say they're looking for game and then they don't ever sign up for anything anyone puts forward in the communities they're part of, it's not because they hate the GMs or they hate the other players. They just don't feel comfortable with a different group because they're not getting the same dynamic. Okay. Second group, of course, is they're the one trick pony. The guys that play one or two systems, that's all they do. That's the game they play, and they enjoy it, and they know everything about it, and they're super awesome about it. And if you ever need to know something about that system, go to that person because they're going to know everything about it. Um, and great, cool. In fact, that's what Pathfinder Society is around here. Is the guys in our Pathfinder Society are pretty much hardcore Pathfinder players. They don't play hardly anything else. They do play Starfinder, but Starfinder is basically a variant of Pathfinder, so I kind of consider them the same game at this point. But the idea being that you know you can be in love with one game, but then you go on to into a community and you say, "Man, I really want to play some role playing games. I want to role play." What they're really saying is, "I want to play game X. I don't want to play Fantasy Age. I don't want to play Dragon Warriors. I don't want to play, I don't want to play Star Wars. I want to play D&D. I want to play Pathfinder. I want to play, World of Darkness, whatever their preferred game is." And that's what they're really saying. They're not asking for another game. They're asking specifically to see if somebody will run a game that they're already comfortable with. And so what happens is you get a lot of people in a lot of communities that do that. They tend to adjust themselves and say, "I'm looking for a game." Well, you're not looking for a game. You're looking for a game of D&D. And you should be honest when you're asking about people running games. If you are a one-trick pony, you should be more honest in how you approach the community when looking for games and say, "Hey, is anyone running game X?" Because I would love to play. Because what you're doing when you announce globally that you want to play games is you get a guy that is willing to run something, but maybe he won't run something you're familiar with. Or he runs something that he's very familiar with that he wants to introduce to other players or whatever, and I've done that before, so I'm very much know what I'm talking about this. Do it a lot, actually. Get players occasionally. You run into this grouping where people will get into the idea and get into their head and they'll squeeze the idea together that that we should just know that they really mean I want to play D&D or I want to play Pathfinder. No, that's not how it works. Because you're not looking for the game that I'm running. I'll offer you a spot at my table. Fine, okay. You wanna play? Oh, I want to play D&D. Well, we're playing Old School Essentials. Well, I really want to play Fifth Edition. Okay, that's fine. If that's what you know, that's what you love. That's fine. What's not fine is to uh, lead people on to believing that there's uh, a reason for them to try to put together a game if there's really no purpose because people that are asking about running games aren't looking for just any game. They're looking for a very specific type of game, a very specific setting, very specific rule set, whatever. Uh, and that's a big problem. So that's the second group. The third group, of course, is your hardcore hobbyist. And these are the people that when they say they're looking for a game, they are looking for a game. They are not going to be picky. They can still be a little more, they can be snobbish at times towards certain types of gaming, like hardcore fantasy hobbyists versus hardcore sci-fi hobbyist. But the reality is when they go out and they post into a community, "Hey guys, I'm looking to play some RPGs," you can literally throw almost anything at those people, and they will come to the table. And those are the people that are the least, I think, prevalent among the groups. I think the majority of role players are in the second category. I think that they fall in love with one or two games, which again, nothing wrong with that, but they want to play them to the exclusion of everything else. you really have to be looking for the hardcore hobbyist, if you're like me anyways, and you're wanting to get a game going, you really need to have a lot of hardcore hobbyists around you. People who are open to the idea of new things, trying games never heard of, trying different systems they've never tried before. Otherwise, it's like pissing in the wind. It really is. You will get nowhere, and all you're going to do is get wet, because it's not going to be worth the time. So let me kind of close this video off by saying what I'm going to say about it, which is, why do I see this as a problem in the hobby? I see it as a problem in the hobby because the time and effort it takes to put together a group is, lack of a better way, I hate using kind of this description for what I just said. It's very time consuming. It is intensive. It is labor intensive. It is time intensive. It takes work. Um, Trying to get people to show up for games, especially games that are not mainstream or games that people are not familiar with, even if they're good games, and people would enjoy them if they tried them, very likely enjoy them if they tried them. It's hard to get people into those because you have to pitch that game. You have to pitch the concept. You have to pitch the actual RPG, uh, to them. You're not just putting out there that you're going to run a game that everyone already knows, necessarily. It's easy to walk onto a forum like RPG.net or the Roll20 forums or D&D Beyond and say, "Hey, I'm going to run a game. I'm going to run a fifth edition game." Okay, well, everybody already there's a built-in base to that, so it's not as difficult and time sensitive and time intensive for you to do that because you're not selling people something that they're not familiar with. It's like the difference between telling somebody you're going to make a mistake or a very fancy French dinner. People know what steak is. People understand what steak tastes like. They understand what they like about steak and everything else. You tell them you're going to cook a very fancy French dinner, they may be very hesitant about it because they don't know what goes into it. They don't know anything about it. It could be disgusting to them. They don't know, and they're going to be hesitant about it. And it really is a slap to the face when people are not honest in their desires. You know, uh, and with the casual player, it's not necessarily their fault because it's like I said, they're not trying to distance themselves from the rest of the community. It's just a lot of those guys are looking for the thrill that they get from playing with a very specific group of people, a very specific set of individuals, or specific, organizational setup, like Pathfinder Society, D&D Adventurers League, that kind of stuff. Um, so that's where they're kind of coming from. But the real issue comes from the middle ground people, where they're not clear on how they feel about trying new things. So when they come out of the woodwork all the time to say, "Oh, I want new games," and they don't really want new games, they want the same old slop. And that, again, nothing wrong with liking. If you want to eat gruel for every meal, that's fine. But understand that there could be something out there that you're missing by being closed-minded. Or alternatively, you're making other people feel like they're inadequate as GMs or DMs or even other players for liking things or trying to put together a group that doesn't manifest because they can't get enough people. Because it wastes everyone's time. And mostly the GMs, but it does waste other players' time too. And I've had that happen several times where groups get small, they shrink really fast. It, and sometimes it's just because the system doesn't work the way we want it to or whatever, and there's nothing wrong with any of that. Absolutely nothing wrong with any of that. But you have to be willing to be honest. And I think that's really where it breaks down. Is I think there's a lack of honesty among people when they talk about wanting to play. They're not honest with themselves and they're honest with the community they're a part of. And so they'll say, "Hey, I really want to try blank. I really want to do blank." And that's not what they mean. And so you really wind up with a community of GMs who can become easily discouraged when they try to put together a game and they get two players interested instead of 4 or 5. When 10 people just got done saying they wanted to play, but they only get 2 people interested in their game, it makes them feel kind of bad. You can feel kind of dirty about it. And it's just not fun. It's not fun. It can suck the fun out of the hobby too for those GMs because their enthusiasm for different systems, different games, even if they're one-trick pony GMs, but they run a lot of a very different type of game. Say they run Deadlands Classic, or like I said, they run Hero System or something very off the wall. It can make them feel like they're not welcome in the hobby because the majority of the community they're around doesn't accept them. And I know that's kind of it's kind of on them a lot, but there is a level of it that goes back on the community where the community should be more accepting of the idea and open to the idea of trying new things every now and again. Like I said, sometimes it's good. You can eat roll every day and survive, but sometimes you just want a steak. Sometimes you want a fancy meal. Sometimes you want something different. And for the GMs that are struggling to find groups in communities where people constantly talk about wanting to try new things and something they never do, don't be discouraged. Keep looking for other communities. Look into communities where you've seen people running different games, whether it be a different game store, whether it be a different different online communities, whatever, different websites, whatever. Go to different discords, get on different discords, and look. There are plenty of people in the hobby that are willing to sit down with you and are willing to play the games you want to play if you look. Don't become discouraged. Don't let it beat you down. You will eventually find a group for the games you want to run, even if it's a small group. It's better to have a small group than no group at all, and that's the truth. But if like I said, but if you are one of those guys that talks all the time about wanting to play but you never play anything, guys, stop doing that. If you don't really want to play something, don't announce to the world you want to play until you really do, unless you're very specific about what you're looking for. Like I said, if you go onto a community and you want to play 5th edition D&D, be honest. Go out into the community and say, hey guys, I'm looking for a 5th edition game. If you're a casual type fan, be honest with people. Say, hey, I'm looking to try some new games. I'm new to the hobby, or I'm not, hardcore to the hobby, and I'm looking for some new games. And be honest with the GMs in the groups that you're part of, because those guys uh, can really help you find things that you love, and you may find a new group of people that you really like playing with, or new people, anyways. Not so the whole group. Group dynamics are always weird, but especially online. But so when you get into that situation, just remember, guys, being in the hobby is simple as this. Be honest, be truthful, and don't let yourself get discouraged. And by the way, if you're a player having a hard time finding a group because you really want to play, but you're not interested in some off the wall obscure games, and that's all that's being run around you, follow the same advice as I gave GMs. Look for other communities that will accept you for what you want to play. If you're in a community you want to play Savage Worlds, nobody likes Savage Worlds, nobody wants to run it. Look for a community where you can find people that will run Savage Worlds. There are those communities out there. There are tons of people out there playing those different games. Um, that's just how it is. Sometimes it takes a lot of work, sometimes it takes a lot of effort, and sometimes it takes a lot of time, honestly, to find those groups. But you can find them. Just don't give up on the community. And like I said, guys, from both sides of the table, both as a player and as a GM, for the love of God, like I said, just be honest. Be honest with what you expect. Be honest with what you want. And be honest with what you're looking for. Because if you're not honest, people are going to take the wrong impression from you. And eventually, I'm going to say this outright, both as a GM and as a player, eventually people won't want you around. If you're the kind of guy that joins a game but you're not really interested, and you drop after 2 sessions, and you do that 5 or 6 times, people are going to stop inviting you to the table because they know you're just going to leave. And if you're a GM that constantly uh, tries to start games and they never get off the ground, that reputation will stick to you because at least if it's on you, if you just kind of give up on it after a while, because what happens is that reputation sticks to you like a stink that you don't have the dedication to run it. So, anyways, guys, as always, I'd love to hear your opinions on this. Thoughts, comments, questions, concerns. Like I said, if you guys need to do a reaction video to it, feel free. You can tell me I'm completely wrong. I could be misrepresenting the community completely, but these are things I've seen. These are things I've noticed. So this is not meant to be a, oh, well, you're right, wrong, whatever. This is a strictly, this is what I see going on video. And as always, guys, we do hope you have fun. We do hope you guys are on the game table at some point.